All right, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about this massive theory that honestly sounds like the blueprint for a giant Lego castle. We're going to explore how entire societies build their most important rules and, get this, how that whole building plan might just be hardwired inside our own brains. So how exactly do you build a just society from the ground up? Well, let's find out.
That's right. Hello there, Super Builder. You've brought a really big question to our Lego table today, and we are absolutely going to build the answer together, piece by piece. So here's our plan for the day. First, we'll look at society's two most fundamental building blocks. Then, we'll get into a really special rule for putting them together. After that, we'll see how this all works in the real world with examples from Japan and Denmark. And finally, we're going to uncover the science behind it all in the brain's very own blueprint.
Okay, first things first. Every great build has to start with its cornerstones. And in our model for building an entire country, there are two Legos that are, without a doubt, more important than all the others. The very first one is what we're calling the self block. Now, its official name is rational self-determination, or just autonomy. It's this core idea that you, as a person, are smart enough to decide what's right and wrong, and that you're responsible for your own actions. It's the block that represents you. And our second essential piece, that's the friendship block, or what's officially known as societal interdependence. You know, this block represents the simple fact that none of us are building this thing alone. We're all connected, and the rules of a society are there to help us live together peacefully and to protect the whole group.
So we've got our two main blocks, but how do you actually put them together? This is where it gets really cool, because if you mess this part up, the whole structure could just fall apart. There's a special rule for getting it right. The rule is called orthogonal transformation. I know, it sounds super complicated, but it's really not. Think of it this way. Orthogonal is just a fancy way of saying two things can meet and influence each other without crashing and breaking. It means our self-block and our friendship block can work together while still being independent. And that's what creates a really strong, stable structure. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got a bad build. This is what happens when one block just squishes the other. You know, either the group completely crushes the individual, or one person just ignores the needs of the group. But on the right, you see the good build. This is that orthogonal transformation in action. The blocks are independent, standing side by side, each one supporting the other to hold up the entire moral building. It's all about balance.
Okay, so we've seen what the good build looks like in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look. Our first case study takes us to Japan to check out how they've built a core part of their legal system.
You know, Japan is such a fascinating example of a good build. Their philosophy is this amazing blend of Western ideas about the individual and Eastern ideas about community. So for them, autonomy isn't just I can do whatever I want. It's about being a responsible, moral agent within the social order. This mix of the self-block and the friendship block is so powerful that it actually forms the justification for huge state policies, like their stance on capital punishment. But what happens when a build goes wrong? What if that delicate balance is totally lost? For that, our second case study looks at a really difficult chapter in Denmark's history and, importantly, how they eventually went about fixing their moral structure. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, Denmark's state policies were a textbook example of a bad build. In the name of social well-being, that's the friendship block, the state pushed eugenics programs that completely, utterly squished the self-block, crushing individual dignity and autonomy. And this wasn't just some brief mistake. These laws were passed way back in 1929, and for almost 40 years, thousands of people were subjected to these horrific practices. It actually took all the way until 2023 for the state to finally issue a formal apology and acknowledge the deep, structural harm that was caused. In this quote from Denmark's social affairs minister, wow, it just really captures the weight of it all. Calling it one of the blackest chapters in Danish history is such a powerful admission of the profound moral failure that took place.
So here's the key takeaway. The apology wasn't just saying sorry. In our theory, it's what we'd call a normative correction. It was a conscious, deliberate effort to fix the build, to recalibrate the entire structure, and to rebalance those blocks so that the group, societal interdependence, respects and protects the individual instead of destroying them.
Okay, so we've seen this blueprint play out in philosophy and in the laws of entire countries, but now for the part that might just blow your mind. What if this entire building plan, the blocks, the rules, all of it is actually located deep inside you?
It turns out
There is a biological foundation for our two cornerstone blocks. Neuroscientists have pointed to a specific part of the brain that seems to be the architect for our whole build, the medial dorsal prefrontal cortex, or MDPFC. Let's just call it the impression manager block, because it holds both our self block and our friendship block.
And this is just brilliant. This is how it all connects. This one part of your brain is literally the biological hardware for both of our blocks. It manages your impressions of other people, it regulates your own self-control, and it's constantly trying to find a sound likeness. Basically, a healthy, stable balance between how you see yourself and how you relate to others. It's your brain's own internal system for creating that perfectly balanced orthogonal build. So what we have here is this incredible, unified theory, from the abstract ideas of philosophy to the concrete policies of nations and all the way down to the neural wiring in our very own brains. We can see a single, coherent blueprint for how we build and sometimes rebuild our moral worlds. And with that, your blueprint is complete. You now have the fundamental tools to understand this whole process. So consider yourself a certified super builder, ready for even bigger projects.
Which of course leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. Using this blueprint we've just gone over, take a look around you. How is your own society balancing its blocks? Are they in that healthy side-by-side relationship, or is one starting to squish the other? The answer to that question tells you a whole lot about the strength of the structure you're living in.
Hello there, Super Builder. Today, we're putting a powerful blueprint for society to the test.
We have got a really big question on our Lego table today. Is this special building plan as strong as it sounds? Let's test it out. Okay, so it all kicks off with two essential building blocks, our cornerstones.
First up, rational self-determination. You can just think of this as your self-block.
And next we have societal interdependence. This is our friendship block. Pretty simple, right?
So you have your self-block and your friendship block, but the real question is, does this blueprint work? Time for our first test. Are these just cool ideas, or are they actually hardwired into our brains?
Well, a recent interview confirms it with a big yes. This blueprint is solid. Turns out a part of your brain called the MDPFC is the biological foundation for both.
Just think of it as your impression manager block. It helps you balance yourself within the group.
Okay, on to the next test. How do these blocks actually fit together to build something strong?
Our blueprint uses something called orthogonal transformation. It's a fancy term for a perfectly balanced build. This means your self-block and friendship block support each other, instead of clashing. Japan's philosophy is a perfect real-world example. They have this Kantian-Confucian hybrid model. See, for them, autonomy is responsibility within the group, and that structure is incredibly strong. But what happens when a build goes wrong? When one block gets way too much weight? Let's look at Denmark's history with forced sterilizations. It's a tough but important example. In this case, the friendship block completely squished the self-block. A seriously bad build. But Denmark's recent apology acted as a normative correction. It shows you can fix a bad build. They had to rebalance the blocks, which proves our blueprint can model those necessary fixes too. So the blueprint passed the test. It perfectly connects our brain blocks with a country's rules. So this brings up a big question. How do these two cornerstones build your world? The same blocks that build whole societies are already at work inside your brain. Go build something amazing.